I'm Randy Patterson, author of How to Be Miserable and a few other books. I've thought that maybe people visiting this channel are a bit tired of psychology, so here's the traditional How I Spent My Summer Holiday piece. Maybe you heard some news from Canada this summer. On June 27th, the town of Lytton reached a high of 46.6 degrees, breaking the all-time record high temperature of 45 degrees set in 1937 for all of Canada. For those of you who still use Fahrenheit, 46.6 is 115.9 degrees Fahrenheit. And that new record lasted 24 hours because the next day it was broken, also in Lytton, and that day it hit 47.9 or 118.2 degrees Fahrenheit. The next day it was broken again with a high of 49.6 Celsius or 121.3 Fahrenheit. That's higher than the hottest temperature ever recorded in Las Vegas, Nevada. The next day, Lytton did not set a new record. That day, the weather station burned down, along with virtually the entire town. Over 90% of the structures in the town were razed to the ground. So it's been quite a summer in British Columbia. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that many of the videos are filmed at an orchard in BC's interior. Not in Lytton, but most of the province sat under that heat dome, and the Lytton fire wasn't the only one. Have you ever wondered what that kind of heat does to fruit on a tree? Well, take a look. So we thought we were pretty safe because the nearest fire was 20 kilometers away, but the smoke travels and at some point it starts looking billowy, which suggests maybe it's closer than you think. Then the NASA fire map, which is really useful, shows that it's getting close. And eventually it gets obvious. We've got fire hose and an irrigation system, so we rigged one to the other and hosed down the ground near structures. This is me at 2 a.m. And we built a new irrigation line surrounding the most vulnerable part of the farm. Eventually, it was just getting too close and we had to get out, but we returned the next morning half expecting the whole place to be gone. But as we turned the last corner, we saw that fire teams from all over the province were right outside our gate, and helicopters were bucketing the mountainside just behind us. The property beside us, which is unoccupied, was fully engaged in fire, and the firefighters were attempting to hold back the flames from jumping to us, which they managed. Later that night, the fire burned down the mountainside toward us while we worked on the irrigation system to correct a problem with the pump. We finally got it working as the fire was burning toward us and left. The odd thing is, without any fire suppression equipment at the edge of the property, the fire burned down to this narrow lane and simply stopped. It didn't jump to our side, which is good because if it had, there was pretty much uninterrupted fuel all the way in. But ultimately, the fire burned through much of the underbrush in the area, and it left many of the tall pines and firs standing. Here's some of the aftermath from the neighboring property. This is what we expected to come back to with our own, but we didn't. We had another extended evacuation when the fire burned across the access highway, and ultimately the fire was controlled. The evacuation order was downgraded to alert, and then the alert was lifted for us, for our neighbors, and for the nearby towns. Firefighters did a brilliant job. So now I'm back harvesting what's left of the fruit and prepping the place for winter. One question, of course, is what happens to the wildlife? Well, we've had several mother bears with their cubs visiting on a regular basis, and having the bear fences turned off for a while means that they've learned about the fruit inside. So here's a little guy inside one of the orchard enclosures. Ultimately, the land will come back. Already, the burned areas are beginning to resprout, and burned hills are turning a bright green from new growth. Canada is home to extreme weather events. We expect them to some degree. But the number of these in recent years has clearly been unlike the usual pattern. Climate change is upon us and will change the landscape not only of our region, but of the entire world. We do not have a choice about whether climate change happens. It's already begun and is well underway. We do have a choice about how extreme we want it to be. These next few years will be critical. At issue is whether we feel this planet's ability to sustain life and human habitation is important to us or not. I recently filmed a post on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Human beings have a lot of needs for creativity, for culture, for nature, for jobs and economic security, for water and oxygen, but some needs are more important than others. If we don't have a habitable planet, if we cannot grow food for ourselves, if our atmosphere chokes us, none of those other needs are relevant. Let's hope we make the right decisions and protect this place. It's the only home we've got. Next week, back to psychology. If you like the channel, please subscribe.